Gentlemen, Online Big Blue will bring you the best in New York Giants sports talk and entertainment. All right, we have to sit down a moment and figure this out. We need to figure out the curious case of Daniel Jones. Is Daniel Jones the quarterback that we saw in 2019, or is the 2020 version the quarterback we are going to get with Daniel Jones, who has moments of brilliance and other moments of not so brilliant behavior? And the question is, if it's going to be the latter, can we salvage Daniel Jones? Can we turn him into the franchise quarterback that we all hope he is going to be? Now listen, everyone knows that I am not a Daniel Jones fan. I did not want to draft him coming out that year. I wanted Josh Allen. I've said it a million times. I understood the pick. Going back to Ernie Corsi when he had to trade John Elway, you go, and the same thing with Ernie Corsi and Eli Manning, you go and get your guy that you think is your franchise quarterback. I understand that. And that's what Dave Gettleman did. Now, was Daniel Jones' rookie season a product of his environment with Shermer and Eli Manning? Or is it going to be what it's looking like now with our old buddy Jason Garrett? Now, first of all, let's talk about something, because I was seeing something the other day that cracked me up. Pro Football Focus. Everyone knows I hate Pro Football Focus because it's the stupidest thing I've ever seen. They grade players and they say, well, we watched the film. The problem is you're watching the film. You're not with the organization. You don't know the play that's called. You don't know the line adjustments that were made. You do not know the assignments that were missed. I could go on and on and on and on why Pro Football Focus is the stupidest thing I've ever seen. I love it because they graded Daniel Jones. And they found something the week prior before this, that Jones had completed 70.6 of his passes when using play action and only 60.9 without play action. Okay, more than likely, he threw the ball less during play action. Why? To have play action, you need to run the ball. Which means if you are not running the ball, you cannot have play action. So maybe during the play action passes, he threw it the last 3 weeks, maybe he threw it 10 times compared to 70. All right, so that's one of the stupidest things that I've ever seen and I've ever read. Now, the problem with Daniel Jones right now this year is, okay, he had some warts his rookie season. Everyone thinks he had the greatest rookie season in the world. He had some warts. He only completed 61.9% of his passes, 24 touchdowns, 12 interceptions. We know the fumbles. If you take a look at his average, his yard attempt, it's only at 6.9. This year he's at 6.2, so he's gone down. He had a 2.6 interception ratio. So you need to think of it this way. He had some problems. Daniel Jones had games in clusters his rookie season. He had multiple touchdown games, and then he had some okay games, and he had some bad games. So right now, what we're seeing is just the bad games. He had an okay game against Pittsburgh, but he still had the 2 interceptions. He had a bad game in my mind against Chicago, and he had an interception and a fumble. And he had a horrid game against San Francisco with an interception. And they're calling it a fumble. I don't call that a fumble. I call that an Evan Ingram issue. Now, everyone compares him to Dave Brown because of the fact they're like, well, he's Dave Brown. All right, I lived through the Dave Brown era. I remember the Dave Brown era. Dave Brown, while he was not the most physically gifted quarterback, and he sat on the bench behind Hostetler and Sims for a couple years and Kent Graham, Dave Brown was an okay NFL quarterback. Most forget that his first season starting, he was 9-7 and they just barely missed the playoffs. So he was okay, and then the wheels just kind of fell off the bus. Dave Brown had his own issues. He also had, and kind of like Daniel Jones, he had an issue with the talent that was around him because the Giants were kind of in a transition phase. Daniel Jones's biggest issues are, first of all, his biggest issue, which I'm not 100% sure it can be fixed, is his presence in the pocket. I have said this a million times. Daniel Jones has no blind side awareness. he cannot sense the blindside rush. He can't. There was a couple of times in San Francisco that I thought the ball was going to be stripped away from him from behind and they just missed because he does not feel the rush behind him. Now, in 15 games as a starter, I am starting to lose somewhat of a confidence that he is going to be able to be the master in the pocket. Eli Manning, even in his bad days, always, even as a rookie, always had great pocket presence. He knew to slide. I always say he knew to step up the ladder. He knew to move to the left. He knew to move to the right. Eli Manning, when he was in 2004, probably had the same type of wheels that Daniel Jones has now. Daniel Jones is probably a little faster, but Eli Manning could scoot. He wasn't a runner. He was a gunslinger. But the problem is Daniel Jones does not seem comfortable in the pocket. I mean, he has been sacked 9 times this season so far, but the line has not been horrid. The line, on occasions, on all 3 of these games, has given Daniel Jones, in some regards, a perfect passing lane. I am actually semi-impressed by some of the pass blocking, and some of his sacks were covered sacks because our receivers just couldn't get open. But the line, for most part, in reference to pass protection, has not been horrid. Has not been horrible. It's actually given him a nice pocket at times. But his ability to move to the left, to move to the right, to step up, is not there. Daniel Jones, when he senses the pressure, he thinks 2 things. And I will give him credit. He always keeps his eyes downfield. And I will give him credit for that. But sometimes you need to check off. You need to check off to the running back. You need to check off to the tight end. And he's tried to do that on occasions because, like I said, he's targeted Evan Ingram 20 times. Darius Slayton has the number 1 targets on the team at 22. But then the running backs, the next one on the list is Saquon Barkley at 9, and same with Dion Lewis at 9. And then Wayne Gallman, who, like I said, has 4 targets, he's not checking down. I will give him credit for looking downfield and trying to make a play, but there are times where it's better to take a 4 to a 5 yard gain to a running back than it is to throw an incompletion to Darius Slayton. Darius Slayton is barely catching 50% of his targets thrown to him. I mean, Evan Ingram, he's barely catching 50% as well. I think it's funny that the person on the team that has the highest completion percentage of targets is Golden Tate, who has been targeted 12 times and has caught 10. Sterling Shepard's been targeted 10 times and caught 8. And it's funny, if you take a look at their average or their completion average, it's 8.3 and 9.4. So he's not going that far down the field. Darius Slayton's completion ratio is 15.7. His average yards is 15.7. So the thing is, we need to understand that sometimes it's better to check off for a 5 yard game like a run than it is to constantly be looking downfield. And in some ways, if you look at him, it's almost like he feels like he's giving up on a play if he checks off. And like I said, I would feel better in this regards that, like I said, if he checks down and throws the ball, and then he does either taking the sack or moving or throwing the ball away. Now the other issue, like I said, we're going back to is his pocket presence. His pocket presence is horrid. I mean, it is not good at all. He has, and I kind of got off topic, but he's got 2 options in his mind. One, he takes the ball up the middle if the defense gives it to him. And then the other one is he literally tries to see, if you watch him, he tries to roll out to the right. Now, if I'm seeing this, other teams are seeing this. So, I mean, it's not rocket science. You cut off his edge, and then, and that's going to be it. You're going to get the sack. The problem against the game in San Francisco that San Francisco 49ers had is they were so banged up, they couldn't hold the edge. But teams like Pittsburgh and also Chicago, they held the edge. I mean, San Francisco couldn't hold the edge. So the question is then going to be, how can we get him to have a higher level of pocket awareness? And honestly, you have to hope that just comes with practice and playing. And Dave Brown kind of had a similar issue. Dave Brown did not have fantastic pocket presence. So we have to hope that he gains the knowledge that is needed to understand awareness in the pocket. The other issue is, like I said, he needs to understand how to check down to his second or third, if potentially even fourth option, and just dump it off to the running back. It's not. I've saw some plays in the last couple of days where he had some running backs open for short gains, but he tried to force the ball down deep. Now that's not Jason Garrett's fault. Jason Garrett calls the plays. Daniel Jones needs to execute. And that's it. I mean, if Daniel Jones is not throwing to the right receiver or to the right spot because he's not hitting the open man, that's not Jason Garrett's fault. That's 100% on the quarterback. The other issue we need to address briefly, and we've talked about this before, his line adjustments are not there. His ability to call out the mic, his ability to make adjustments and check out of plays. It was funny. He actually checked out of some of the plays in Chicago, which I thought was kind of interesting. So, that was interesting. He actually did check out of some of the plays. He didn't check out really of any of the plays in San Francisco, but he did check out of a lot of plays in Chicago, which is what you need to do. But the problem is you need to understand what you're checking into in the right formations, and you need to make the proper adjustments. Eli Manning, throughout his career, was a master at that. Probably because of the fact that he had Archie Manning and Peyton Manning, in his bloodlines, and they probably drilled it into him, the knowledge of the game. So Daniel Jones, to continue his maturation, needs to progress on 3 levels. Learning how to check down and make line adjustments and make changes at the line of scrimmage and identifying the mic. He also needs to work on his blindside awareness and his just overall pocket presence. And he needs to understand that sometimes going for a 5-yard gain to a running back is not giving up on a play. I think if we can work on those 3 things, I think he'll be fine. And now people are going to be like, well, Tim, that's a lot to work on. Yeah, it's a lot to work on. But we're a bad team. So this could be another learning season for Daniel Jones. Last year should have been a learning season as well, but we're going to continue the education process of Daniel Jones. And I think if we can fix those 3 things, in my mind, I never thought Daniel Jones was going to be an all-world quarterback. I thought he would be a good starting quarterback. Phil Simms, for most of his career, was a good to average starting quarterback. He got better as he progressed with age. But if Daniel Jones could be on the same level as Phil Simms, without the injuries, I would be happy with that. And I'm only using Phil Simms as a point of reference because we're Giant fans. And I get concerned because, like I said, when I'm the voice of reason, there's something wrong here. Because I'm the one that's always negative, I'm told. But like I said, I am not ready to give up on Daniel Jones. I'm not ready to give up on Joe Judge. And I'm not ready to give up on the season yet. But those are the things I think Daniel Jones needs to focus on to continue to grow in his NFL career. And again, this is Tim with Online Big Blue, bringing you the best of New York Giants sports talk and entertainment. And as always, if you can if you can subscribe, if you can ring the bell, I think you know what that means. That'd be awesome.